Welcome to the Final Frontiers radio show, where we spotlight inspiring missionary endeavors around the globe. Stay tuned to hear how you can personally get involved helping the Lord's frontline soldiers effectively advance the gospel where it has never been preached before. In this episode, we'll have an interview with Cathy Stahlman about the woman's perspective as a missionary in Africa. And we have an important discussion about visionary trip opportunities for families and churches who are interested in experiencing the mission field.
Would you like for world missions to be fresh and exciting in your home? Here at Final Frontiers, we work hard to produce a full-color magazine with inspiring stories, important global facts, and missions opportunities every quarter throughout the year. You can sign up for your copy at finalfrontiers.world.
Hello, this is Joshua Martin, and I'm down here in Missouri today with Pastor Matt Stahlman and his wife, Cathy. And years ago, they were in Malawi, Africa as missionaries. And I wanted today just to really address the woman's perspective in missions, what it's like to be going to the mission field with her husband, the experiences that you had, Cathy, when you were on the field, the hardships, the joys. Just could you tell us what it was like just going with your husband to the field?
I can tell you the very first step that we took off the plane, I had about 2-month-old baby and a 1.5-year-old son. So we had 2 sons, and we take our first few steps off the plane, and I look around, and there are military men everywhere holding some sort of gun, maybe a AR-15 or something really intimidating. And my first thought was, what did I just do? Can I get back on that plane? That was the honest truth.
Yep.
After we, got in, a missionary couple met us, and, it's just so much to take in. I mean, the airports are different. They're asking you questions. You're trying to be honest and say the right answers, but you're wondering, is that the correct answer? But even just getting through customs and getting through the airport is an ordeal. And you've got 2 babies, and it's an ordeal. It was a big thing.
So a lot of culture shock there.
Absolutely. But I will have to say, coming back to the States was more of a culture shock than going to Malawi. And I think I've heard other people say that as well. And I think it's because in America, we're so busy, so busy. And over there, you have every evening at home. People are slower paced. They'll stop and talk and say hi. And here we have schedules and routines and agendas. And it's a lot different. That's
so true. In third world conditions, there's a slower pace to life. It's relationship orientated, and it's not on the schedule constantly. What was language like for you? I think is one of my biggest regrets, is that it was so overwhelming and so different. They spoke the Chichewa language, or maybe some broken English, maybe. And I could do the formal greeting, but beyond that, I knew very little, and I didn't put a lot into learning the language. Now, looking back, that is something I would have definitely invested way more time into. That would have been a priority for me to get a language teacher, even if it was just another lady there in a village, not an actual teacher, but to learn the language so I could communicate better with the people. And talking to my sister, when she's been on the mission field in Peru, there's so many responsibilities. Like you're saying, when you have to take care of those 2 children, and so your husband's out ministering and preaching, and you don't get that experience with him all the time because of all the responsibilities you have.
That is something else that I learned over there that probably God used the most. Your husband is going out there, and he is witnessing to people, and he is in those villages, and he's helping people. And you're at home changing diapers and thinking, man, I want to do something important. Mm-hmm. And God showed me there that was my job, and that is still my job, no matter. Important. Yes. And I had a pastor say once, if you fail at raising your children, you have failed. And that really kind of woke me up. I thought, well, this is important, and made me take it a lot more seriously. But we had only been in Malawi for 10 days when Nathan and Caleb, who were 2 months and a 1.5 years old, had malaria for the first time. And when we went to the hospital, the doctor said, well, we can test him for malaria, but it takes 7 to 10 days to show up. So it's probably not that, but sure enough, it was. And that was so discouraging. I mean, because you hear about malaria, but then for them to actually have it that soon, I just thought, oh, this is crazy, And we did good for the next 6 months, but then the last 6 months we were there, It was constant. And I can remember Matt coming home one day, and he walked in and he said, well, how are you? And I just lost it because I wasn't good. It had been a terrible day. It was when the kids had malaria. One of the symptoms is diarrhea. Of course, we had cloth diapers. And I would get one change to clean that diaper out. Then it would be the next one. That's literally all I did that day. And it's exhausting. Yeah. And by that time, I had started getting malaria, and Nathan and I had a positive slide every month for the last 6 months that we were there, and it just takes a toll on your body. So you're over there, you're lonely, you're spiritually, you go to church and the preaching is good, but it's a lot more simple. So anything that you get spiritually, really a lot of it's on your own.
Your alone time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you're not doing that, and I'll be honest, there's days I wasn't, and I could tell, I mean, I just spiritually was dry, physically exhausted. I had, right before we came home, I was 22, and I'd had malaria every week for like a month, and they would give you something for it, and you'd go back, they test you and see, most of the time they'd give me something that'd be gone. This time we went, I had the test done, took the medicine, went back, and it hadn't gone away, and it actually had increased to the next level. Wow. So they gave me something else, went back, same thing again. So this time they gave me quinine, which of course here is poison. It's poison over there too, but they use it. Uh-huh. And here I was 22 years old. I was crying for my mom. I was having hallucinations. I had this terrible ringing in my ears from the quinine, terrible taste in my mouth. I'd sleep with gum in my mouth, and it was terrible, and I remember thinking, okay, God, I know you want us to come here, but really? Like all of this, because I felt like with being sick, we weren't getting anything done,
Yeah, right.
So that was hard. And Matt said, he said, if you or Nathan get a positive malaria slide in the next 2 weeks, I'm going to send you guys home for a while to rest, recoup, get strong. And 2 days later, we both tested positive again. So, he called our pastor and he talked to him, and he said, I want you all to come home. And that was hard, because you feel like, what is everybody going to think? Mm-hmm. We weren't here that long, whatever. But we looked over at Nathan. Here he is. He's 2 years old. He's laying on the couch. He's pale as can be, dark circles under his eyes, and just laying there. Mm-hmm. And we knew we had to. And so we came home, and it was hard, but it was the right thing. We can see now, looking back, why God did all that, so that we could have a heart for missions, for missionaries. I have a love that I never would have had for these missionary wives with these little kids running in, to church. And even just the idea of deputation is so hard on children. And people, you come into church, and I was one. I would judge these poor ladies and these little kids and think, man, their kids are crazy, running all over the place. And as soon as we surrendered to Malawi, my first thought was, oh, great, that's going to be me. I'm going to be walking in these churches. My kids are going to be going crazy, and everybody's going to think I can't control my children. Uh-huh. And it was hard, and I went to Matt, and I said, this is a concern for me. And he said, Cathy, we just have to rear our children the way that God wants us to, and everybody else is just going to have to stay out of it. We're just going to answer the Lord for it. But, it is hard on families. Those kids are in car seats or in the car. Mm-hmm. They don't have a good diet. They don't have a schedule at all. Mm-hmm. So God really used that, too, in my life, just to have understanding for people.
Is there any miracles that took place there, just like one really good story of something special that happened in Malawi?
There was one night, and it may not be special to anybody else, but it was special to me. Mm. One night, Matt was kind of bothered because you could hear these like chants and drums and all of this stuff. And he said something about it, and I couldn't hear it. And we went outside, and he's like, you can't hear that. And I couldn't hear it. And I really believe that the Lord closed my ears, that I wouldn't be frightened, that I wouldn't be scared, that I wouldn't,
That's good.
Yeah. So that was, it was big to me. It was big to me.
For people out there, they'll say that our listeners, they do love missionaries and they want to help them and they want to be an encouragement to them. What could they do for like a missionary wife on the field? From your perspective, what would you have liked more to not feel as lonely?
Mm-hmm. That is a really great question, because I was so surprised how many friends I had that didn't write me. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say, is to write them. And now, we were in Malawi almost 20 years ago. And the capabilities that we have now, keeping in touch through Skype or WhatsApp, WeChat, all
it's amazing.
different. It is. I mean, what a big encouragement you could be to somebody. So if handwriting is harder, even just figuring out the postage or whatever, that's hard. That would be the number one thing. Handwritten letter would be great. But I would say definitely email them. And it doesn't have to be long, or you might think that something you say is stupid, but it's really not. Because you come home and stuff is so different. I mean, cell phones, or apps, just coin phrases that become a part of our language that we don't even realize. And then people come back and they don't understand. So if you'll just write and just include, even if you think it's nonsense, it's not nonsense to them. It'll be important to them. It'll be encouragement to them.
That's true. What could you say to, maybe there's a young lady out there listening who's thinking of going to the mission field. Can you give any advice to someone like that that's listening?
I would say walk with the Lord here before you go there. Don't think that you're going to get over there and then decide you're going to draw closer to the Lord. You need to hear him speak clearly and be able to, I've heard Brother Anger say this, be able to get a hold of the Lord quickly. I mean, if you're in the middle of something, you need him there right then. So that's what I would say spiritually. But then also physically. I mean, I had a hard time when we got to Malawi because we walked everywhere for several months. That's another whole long story concerning our container. But we walked everywhere. So get in shape physically is a big deal. Practice carrying a backpack around full of stuff, because if you're going to be on public transportation or you're going to be walking in villages, practice carrying your stuff on you. Yeah. That story with the container, we shipped our container early on, several weeks before we left for Malawi, and we got over there and no container. And then Matt would go and say, well, it was here, but they didn't unload it and it's passed us up, And I kept a journal and those first few months, and there was an entry I had in there. Matt went to check on the container again. They forgot to unload it again. Today it was either laugh or cry, but today I cried. And I look back at that now and I think, that was so sad. But, it was a big deal, But anyway, but again, just looking back, so many experiences. And I truly believe that the Lord had us go there to equip us and prepare us for camp. Yeah, that we would be able to share with people what we wish we knew before we got to the field.
Yes, God really worked in that way, and it's been able to be a blessing to many young ladies' lives through you. Thanks for being encouragement to my sister on the field. I appreciate that.
She's very special.
So it's been good talking to you today. Thanks for doing this for us.
Thank you, Brother Josh.
Hello, my name is Mike Sandiford, and it's time for one of our original segments, Following Timothy. Following Timothy takes us around the world to hear the testimonies of our sponsored national trainees. Each of these men are currently being trained by veteran national pastors. What's their calling? To become church planners, to reach their communities, countries, and regions with the gospel of Jesus Christ. If you would like to know more about the Timothy Project, you can visit us at finalfrontiers.world. Today we take you to the continent of Africa, to the northwest country of Nigeria, where 50% of the population is Muslim. In the village of Iyenle Vialujo Sidbumoso, Timothy writes in his own words, "Some years ago I was sitting in my house, and a man came to me and preached the gospel of Christ, about salvation to me. Then on that day I realized I was a sinner, dying and going to hellfire. So on that day I gave my life to Christ by accepting and confessing him with my mouth as Lord and Savior. When I gave my life to Christ, I began going to church. One day I sat down and a voice came to my heart and asked, 'Why are you not doing God's works? Don't you see how many people are going to hellfire? Do God's work if you love them. Preach the gospel to them so that they do not go to hellfire.' I had no rest or peace in my mind, no peace in my heart about the subject. So I started preaching the gospel. I have a strong conviction to become a preacher." Please remember this Timothy in your prayers and others like him in the country of Nigeria. Every month we consistently have several Timothy applications coming in. If you would like to know more about the Timothy Project and supporting the Timothy Project, you can visit us at finalfrontiers.world.
Paul discipled young men like Timothy and Titus who journeyed with him and were given hands-on experience in church planting. And today there are many surrendered Timothys eager to receive training from national preachers and institutes, but lacking simple finances for curriculum, living expenses, and transportation to unreached villages. To make an eternal investment in a young church planter's life, visit finalfrontiers.world.
Hi, I'm John Nelms. I'd like to take a few moments to talk to you about coming with us to Honduras on one of our visionary trips this summer. Each summer, my wife and I spend our entire 3 months in Honduras just entertaining and showing off the ministry that we had down there to those of you who are involved with us and would like to come and join us on what we call a visionary trip. Why we call them that is simply this. The Bible tells us that we're to lift up our eyes and look on the harvest. And it also tells us that what our eyes see affects our hearts. And so we wanted to have more than just a missions trip for you to come on. We wanted it to be a visionary trip so that you could actually see what it is we're doing, what you've heard about, and take part in participating with us in it. Our trips are open for church groups, families, youth groups, even individuals who want to come along. We do them for several reasons. One is to change the hearts of the people who come. We want you to see what's going on in the mission field and let it touch you in a personal way. We also want it to affect your minds. You know, our young people growing up today in America are influenced more with things that are not real than with things that are real. They seem to spend their time glued to their iPads and their iPhones, playing games and so forth. But a missions trip, or as we say, a visionary trip, is an excellent way to get them involved in missions by allowing them to be exposed to the mission field. We also wanted to influence the attitudes of the people who come. In other words, we want you to come back with a positive exposure to missions that will encourage you to be involved in missions for the rest of your life. So many times in our churches when we hear about missions, it's almost negative. And it shouldn't be that way. And it's no wonder that so few people are interested in being missionaries today when the only thing they've heard about missions comes from a negative standpoint. And so we want to also impact their lives. And this is particularly seen amongst young people who come when they realize that name brands and logos are not so important anymore. We've actually seen teenagers come down to Honduras and take off their Nikes or their Adidas shoes to give them to another teenager who is barefooted, and then they go home themselves just wearing a pair of sandals. They never seem to be disappointed that they did that. They have a smile on their face. They were thankful for an opportunity to share their blessings with someone else, and you know that that has to make an impact in that young person's life that will last them throughout their life. Now, some families who come down use it as a vacation time. And after all, why go to a theme park designed to look like another country when you can go to that country itself at a comparable price? Some people go to visit the preacher they support or even the child they support, and that's an excellent reason to go. It gives you time to spend with that preacher or child, to visit in their home, to meet their neighbors, to go to their church, to learn what life is really like for them, and even more important, to be able to see how much your contribution to their life and ministry is making in their lives. So I think that's one of the best reasons for people to come. Some come simply because they want to see what life is really like in another country. We can watch it on TV, but it's nothing like actually being there, immersed in the situation to see what it's really like. I find that what seems to influence people the most is when we pull off the side of the road and we actually just go and knock on somebody's door. I'll explain to them who I am and who these people are with me and tell them, you know, these ladies would love to come in and see your kitchen. Now, you ladies listening, you have an idea of what a kitchen looks like. And the ladies in Honduras have an idea of what a kitchen looks like. But I can guarantee you your two ideas are polar opposites of each other. But the Honduran ladies are delighted that a lady from America would want to come into her home and see her kitchen. And there you can see the cooking stove she has, which is just an adobe stove with sticks in it. You look up above that and you'll see that the roof of her kitchen is black from the smoke. There's no ventilation for it. The floor is dirt. The doors are rickety door. You can see perhaps puddles of water in the floor if it rained the night before, and you begin to realize how these people live. There might be 8 of them in the family, but there's only one bed. So where do the other 7 sleep? Well, they sleep on the floor. Well, what happens when it rains? Well, they sit up in the corner of the floor all night long trying to stay dry. And it helps you to understand what life is really like. And we no longer see people in foreign countries as just beggars or uneducated people looking for a handout. We realize that they're up against extreme conditions that you and I have never had to deal with. And we have to ask ourselves, if I lived in this house, how would I get by? So I find that visionary trips are great opportunities in just learning to see how other people live and also in seeing how we do our ministry. So whatever your desires are, whatever your purpose for attending is, I want you to know that you have an opportunity for us to go with you and tailor a trip for your needs. The cost for our trips is $650 for the week, plus the international airfare. While this might seem like a lot to some of you, those of you who are experienced in mission trips realize that this is really a very small price. It includes your meals, your laundry, your lodging, your purified water, all your in-country travel, the translators. It really includes everything from the time you leave the airport in Honduras to the time we take you back to the airport in Honduras. In fact, the only thing you need extra money for is to buy a Coke or maybe some souvenirs. Each day while you're there, we'll spend time visiting in our feeding centers, churches, meeting pastors that we work with, and children. You'll go to remote villages. Some of them you have to ride on horses to get to. You'll even be able to visit the only remaining unreached Indian tribe in Honduras. Right now, we're in the process of planting 3 churches in the 48 villages which they have in their tribe. Each year, about half of the people who come are returning for the 2nd, 3rd, or even 7th time. The other half are first-time visitors. You got to wonder, if we have that much repeat people coming each year, we must be doing something right. And it's because we do our best to make sure that you're comfortable and that you remain well while you're there. We don't want you to come to Honduras and be in the sick bed for a week. We have access to whatever medicines you need, doctors. We have modern facilities. Each room has its own fan and air conditioner. Each room has its own private bathroom with a walk-in ceramic shower. In fact, we have better showers in Honduras than I have in my own home here. We have all the hot water you can use, so don't worry about taking cold showers. We want you to come and be blessed, not to suffer through heat and poor housing conditions. Our desire really is that you get to see the mission field as it is without getting dehydrated and sick. We want you to be able to return home and literally infect your church with a zeal for missions that they've never experienced before. And we still have a few open weeks left for this summer. So if you're interested in coming, give us a call or reach us through our website at finalfrontiers.world. You know, you can come as a church group, a youth group, you can come as a family or even as an individual. But we'll do our best to tailor your trip for your specific desires and needs and to make sure that you get to see the mission field as it really is. Well, why should you not come? Well, to be honest, over the years, I've been given 2 reasons over and over and over again why people would say you shouldn't come. And to be honest, I'll just go ahead and share them with you. The first reason they give me is we're told that our accommodations are too nice. Sometimes people want to come and they want to sleep on the floor or sleep on a church bench, use an outhouse, and go a week without a shower. And if that's you, in all honesty, we can arrange a rough and rugged trip like that for you. But the purpose of our trips is for you to get to see our ministry, not to endure hardships. The second reason we have for people saying that the trip was not what they expected is they say, I came here expecting to lose weight, but I gained weight. Well, guilty. You know, there's that old saying that birds of a feather flock together. Well, if you know what I look like, you'll understand why people who travel with me gain weight. I'm not going to sit down at a meal and starve. I'm going to enjoy myself, and there's going to be plenty of food there for you to enjoy yourselves. But if you're on a diet and you want to lose weight, just nibble on what we give you and pass a plate on down to me, and I'll finish it off. We just want you to have a good time, see the ministry, be touched by the lives of the people you'll meet, and not get sick, not be undernourished, but just have a great time. My wife, Nolene, and I are eager and we're excited for the opportunity to spend a week with you this summer. We want you to see all the work we're doing in Honduras, which really is just typical of what our ministry does around the world. We could take you to another country, but what you would spend on a plane ticket to India or Africa would probably pay for your entire trip to Honduras, including the lodging, the food, and the international airfare. So think about coming down. If there's any more information you need, get in touch with us, and we'll try to give you all the data you need to make a trip successful for you. Thanks so much, and we look forward to seeing you.
For your next family vacation or church missions project, join us for a 1-week visionary trip to Honduras. You'll visit rural churches and homes of poor, destitute families and help serve children at our feeding centers. You'll even have the chance to travel to villages so remote no vehicle can reach them. It's a genuine, third-world missions experience minus the discomfort, with safe and comfortable accommodations for individual families or church groups, letting you and your young person catch a glimpse of the world of missions outside the U.S. To plan your own custom-made missionary adventure, visit us at finalfrontiers.world.
Your inquiries and comments are important to us. If you have questions or perhaps subject matter you would like to have addressed on this show, please visit us at finalfrontiers.world.
Can we really fulfill the Great Commission in our lifetime? The New Testament church was the body of Christ in a particular geographic area. They were a congregation, not a corporation. Paul wrote to churches in the homes of Philemon and Colossae, and Lydia and Philippi, but he also wrote to the assembled in the metropolis of Ephesus, the third largest city of Rome. Corinth evidently had 2 congregations, Upper Corinth overlooking the sea and inhabited by the wealthy, and Lower Corinth situated on the docks where merchants like Aquila and Priscilla worked in the second largest market of the empire. Some believe the 2 Corinthian letters were written individually to each congregation, rather than as 2 letters to both. But Paul also wrote to the churches of Galatia, which was not a city but a region in what is today called Turkey. Those in northern Galatia were not Greeks but were Gauls and Celts. Their ancestors were from the British Isles in northern Europe, who had lived there for 3 centuries. Though considered barbarians due to their ancestry, they spoke Greek and lived under Roman law. Southern Galatians were primarily of Greek ancestry and more easily converted. Finally, Paul wrote to all the believers in Rome, a church he did not start, stating that he was leaving Asia and Greece because he had no place left there to preach. His team had planted churches in every place, which could now finish the job of saturation evangelism. Thus, he planned to pass through Rome on his way to the unreached field of Spain. In the first few decades, they had turned the world upside down. By the year 100, there was 1 church for every 12 unreached people groups. Today, there are more than 416 churches for every 1 unreached people group. To finish the task, we don't have to build the entire house. We only need to place the last few bricks on the chimney, and it's done. I'm John Nelms. To learn more about missions, order a copy of my book, The Great Omission, on our website at finalfrontiers.world.
You've been listening to the Final Frontiers radio show, funded by sponsors like you. Thank you so much for joining us. Through the funding of national and native preachers, we endeavor to effectively advance the gospel where it has never been preached before. If you want more information, visit www.finalfrontiers.world. That's finalfrontiers.world.